Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. This is episode number 47. Thank you to everyone who continues to tune in every week from not just around the UK, from around the world, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. It's great to have you with us on every single episode. We're almost 2 years old now of doing this podcast, and we've had some fantastic guests over the last 2 years. And as you know, I'm keen to discuss a range of issues over several weeks and have a range of guests. It's really important to look over the garden wall, look over the garden fence, and talk to your neighbours every now and then. You know, that's a relative term, neighbour. It can mean lots of different things. And I'm really, really pleased. I say this every week, but I really am this week. I'm really, really pleased to welcome our guest this week because before we connected about doing this podcast, I haven't seen him for literally 10 years. And social media has kind of brought us back together. So I'm really pleased to welcome Divya Prem Das as our guest this week. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Haribo, Radhe Shyam.
Radhe Shyam.
It's really, really good to see you after all this time. And I know we're going to have a fantastic podcast today. There's so many things that we can catch up on and go over. But let's just start with the question I ask every guest when we start is, tell us a bit about you and where you're from.
Well, thank you so much. I just want to give my Dandavat pranams to you and to my dear Guru Day, Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami, and Jai Nitai, Garanga,
Hare Krishna. Radhe Shyam.
Where say sorry again, I've lost my
tell us about you, where you're from, because most of the people watching won't have a clue who you are.
Yeah, well, yes, it's a good point. Well, I originally was born in Camden, London, to a background of Irish, half Irish in my family on my mother's side, and my dad being a Cockney Londoner. And then I came into the world in about 1973, so I'm nearly 50 now, so this is getting good. And and then I kind of like my mum, and the part of my spiritual life, which I think is like the biggest start in my life, was like my mother was come from a Catholic upbringing, you know, a very deep Catholic upbringing, and it was the most amazing thing that I came to learn over my life is my mother was had 6 miscarriages, and her belief in God and Jesus was amazing. And so we took security in past lives and things like this. I was so lucky to be born into the womb of my mum, and where the doctors had told her it's like 98, 99%. I would die, she would die. At best, I'll be a Down syndrome child. So the greatest thing is what her belief in God and Jesus. She was like Jesus, you know, prepared to die for the love of God. And so that was my first entrance into the world. And here I am, not Down syndrome, fully alive. And I think that's the biggest, strongest point of the amount of belief and faith and the blessings I got to be in my mother's womb for 9 months with that type of spiritual energy and belief. So that's how I came into this world, and such blessings. And then my life went on through, you know, Catholic schooling. Went into both primary and Catholic schooling, which was a very nice upbringing to have to kind of each morning we would be doing assembly and songs. Morning is broken, still love that song. All things bright and beautiful, you know, just like Do You Know That? And just this lovely mood and this lovely sweet mood going through my upbringing. And I wasn't so academic at school myself. I was much more into the sports side of life, and I did very well in this country with sport, and as a discus thrower, I got into the rankings in this country under 16s and county and all this thing, county football, and so that was my kind of element. But all the way through, I was always, you know, I think I can't remember who it was. Was it kind of Usain Bolt, and then they looking up to the sky, and I was always like that with Jesus. You know, I felt he was with me, and I think I kind of went into kind of Raganuga back because I was going to church, and for me, divided kind of up and down on my knees and following these procedures become very, you know, bland for me. And then it becomes, so when I used to have Jesus with me in all sorts of different ways, and it wasn't that I could access him. He seemed to be there, give me all these gifts, wonderful, gratitude I had for that. And yeah, very beautiful upbringing that way, and so lucky.
It sounds fantastic, actually. It sounds quite romantic or beautiful. In terms of your upbringing. Your mum, your mother. So you were her seventh child after 6 miscarriages, or?
There was 6 miscarriages, but I had a brother and a sister, and they were both older than me. So she'd had my brother first, and then I can't remember the orders of these.
Okay.
But
okay.
yeah, that's what it was. And she was, I think, about 42, 43 when she had me. So it was like at that time a difficult age.
Yeah. So let's kind of move forward a bit if you want to. You live now in Weston-super-Mare.
Yes.
And we met about 10 years ago. We were both, I was quite random, quite ad hoc, which is still how I deal with a lot of things these days. I was ad hocly going to the ISKCON Centre in Bristol at the time, and we met up a few times and we went on Harinam. So how did your life kind of take you, one sense, from London to Weston-super-Mare? What was kind of going on around that time for you?
Yeah, I after I went through schooling and sports and everything like that, it was very intense what I was doing with that, because it was training every day, and then I kind of had a burnout, and then what happened to me, and then I fell into addiction, and I fell into alcohol and all the kind of maya, not so much of drugs too much, but I was trying everything out and doing everything, and it got me in a lot of trouble, in my life, not with others, but me personally, into depression, and then down to, it ended up being suicide. I had 2 suicide attempts, and so I was so blessed to have the gift of desperation, that I kind of, and such a beautiful guy, Brian, and he was about 70, and when he came to me after I came out of my rehab, like for a week of detoxing, and took me to AA. And then that's when my kind of, my spiritual life woke up again, and I went through this amazing thing, and they have a thing called step 3, which is your higher power, trying to find your higher power. My sponsor was like, I don't need to do that with you. And it was so wonderful, because he's the one who woke up this thing about my mum, and he said, this is why, because you grew up with this faith. So, but I went through recovery, and then that was really wonderful. And then step 11, it says, through prayer and meditation, the conscious contact to God. So I was like, oh, I prayed all my life in church, so this meditation thing started like grabbing me. And so I looked at the Buddha thing, something different. And then I had a musician friend at the time, and then he mentioned to me about Bhaktivedanta Manor, and he said, oh, it's George Harrison's house, and and there's this food, a vegetarian, it's really peaceful there, and everything like that. And I'd seen the devotees kind of going up and down the street when I was younger, 12, 13, and I was laughing at them, and as I did, I thought they were a bit strange and looked a bit odd, and but it's so funny that I had an intrigue. So there was an intrigue. I always remember this intrigue. Sometimes when I wasn't with, in the ego with my friends, I was like, I would love to know what they're about. And then I went there, and I was blown away to go into the manor and the beautiful peacefulness there, Bhaktivedanta Manor, and then to see the deities, which just was like, wow, and then I fell in love at the manor. And
so when was that? When did you first visit Bhaktivedanta Manor?
Bhaktivedanta Manor would now be about 20 years ago. 20 years ago, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's very nice, and I kind of always remember it being the first part about chanting and beads, and being given a set of beads, and getting the Maha mantra.
Wow. I also went first time almost 20 years ago. It was 2004 I first went. So yeah, around the same time as you. So you were still living in London at the time. Somebody encouraged you, or a friend took you to Bhaktivedanta Manor. And that was kind of your, certainly in this life, that was your first experience of kind of Krishna consciousness, Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Fantastic. Can I ask a question a bit more about kind of some of your addictions that you went through, the kind of,
Yeah.
so that was, you were addicted to alcohol?
Yeah, predominantly alcohol was the major one, but then
Yeah.
alcohol could lead me to anything. I never went into anything hard like heroin, but if there was cocaine there, I'd be taking that. I did a lot of marijuana, I'd take that, and sex life if it was there. It was my gateway into the full-blown addiction. But I was already addicted to sport. I realized I had this addictive personality. I was a decathlete when I was doing my sporting stuff. So, one event wasn't enough. There had to be 10. It's a bit like my drinking, not one or two was enough. So.
And what kind of led you to that kind of addictive lifestyle? I don't necessarily mean the sport, but I mean, what kind of caused you to start drinking or drinking more? What was happening for you?
Well, I've learned deeper now that, that come from like a traumatic upbringing. It come from a deep hole in my soul, a lack of, of love at a certain age, because also my mum was alcoholic too, so she developed that. And so them times when I would come back as a child, after school, then she took the drink, and as I understand the disease of alcoholism, then she wasn't so present. It wasn't such a problem, but that, be upstairs, out in the room, hiding the drink. Dad didn't know, trying to hide it. So them kind of elements, all that, and then bullying at school for me. Hence, that's why I went into sport, because I was being bullied, and I was a softie always. I'd never have a fight. So the only way I could stop bullies beating me was become a discus thrower. Because when they saw me throw that a long way, they didn't want to maybe get my right arm, which I'd have never done anyway. But that's how that worked out,
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit more about your kind of Krishna conscious journey. So you went to Bhaktivedanta Manor 20 years ago. Did you then join the temple? Did you start chanting straight away? What kind of went from then on? What happened?
It's really funny chanting straight away. I was told, like, do one round every day and keep consistent. By the end of the week, I'd come back and I'm doing 8 rounds now. My addictive personality, so I flew in there. And also like a couple of weeks, but yeah, I would go there and visit there, and I really just got this attraction and taste, and then it become like a very regular thing. I would be going up there, getting the bus, going there, finding the chanting. I was finding this deeper space in my life where I'd never had so much peace. I'd never had that quiet mind. I'd always been troubled. Via the program, I've been supporting my program and being at the manor, and then the chanting, and then this deeper spiritual contact, and it felt like me. It was my guru Jesus that kind of like qualified me. He's gone, right, now we can take you on. Now you can go and meet God. Which is not so explained so much within Catholicism. These details. So then that's it. I fell in love with Radha Krishna.
It sounds wonderful. And then did you live at the manor at that point? Were you staying for a while?
Yeah, I would go and stay. I'd probably go and stay for a couple of weeks at a time, come to really get to know. And I loved that this practice was a daily practice, not just on a Sunday to feel good and then commit some more sins in the week and come back again. So it become a real lovely connection. I had so much gratitude for the mercy that Krishna brought to me in my addiction and everything, because he'd exhausted this, and I realized this life I've got is to exhaust all of these things, to detach from them. The only way I'm going to detach is exhaust them, And so, yeah, I have so much gratitude for Krishna, and it just an amazing point. Stayed there. The prashadam is amazing, and devotees there just so beautiful, sweet, such a loving mood, and so much support and help. It's just I love it, the man. And then Prabhupada, when I've gone there just recently, I love being there early in the morning at 3 o'clock and just go and have a little chat with Prabhupada on my own, with some deep gratitude for Prabhupada bringing me to the manor, So it's very nice.
So as I mentioned earlier, we met about 10 years ago, you were kind of every now and then going to the ISKCON Center in Bristol. I was every now and then going to the ISKCON Center in Bristol as well. And obviously, I don't see you for 10 years. You know, the world moves on, people move on. And then suddenly, I think you appeared on my kind of social media channels maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months ago. And you've got this new name. You've got this new name of Divya Prem Das, which is a wonderful name, by the way. I've never heard anyone called Divya Prem before. And you have become, or you are, a disciple of Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami. So tell us a bit about your relationship with him, and how did that kind of start, and how did that part of that the journey in your life work for you?
Yeah, well, as I then moved away from Watford, come down to Western-super-Mare, I'd kind of got in a reading group, and it was more with Nitai Maharaj about Radha Dasya, and there's a lot of topics, and I learned a lot more deeper stuff. But this Radha Dasya suddenly struck me, and about Manjari and Manjari Bhav and this, and I really got interested. And then basically I remember knowing that Radha Dasya, you need to talk with a senior devotee, not to read on your own, and this. And I remember I went on Amazon and I just put in Radha Dasya, and there was just one book there. I didn't even look at who wrote it. I was that greedy for it, and I ordered this book, got this book, and then I remember one on the reading group, and I just want to say a big Dandavat pranams to Jagatama Didi for lovely support to me. And the day I will never forget that kind of changed my life was always say, anyone want to read, going to read this afternoon? And there was no one but me, like, yes. And so I went in, and it was just me and Jagatama. And I said, oh, I've got this book, and I haven't read it because I know you're a senior devotee, but then I can read this with you. Is this okay? So this was how sweet it was. So with her mercy, she was like, yes, we can read. So I chose out about the mood of Manjaris, and then we read this, and I'll never forget this kind of moment of wow. She had the same look as I looked up, and something inside me changed. And then, so after reading this in this reading group, I then looked at the book, and then it said Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami. So I've never heard of Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami, but this book captivated me. So I kind of went onto YouTube, started watching some lectures, and another lecture, then another lecture, then an Angamadri Samputika like struck my heart, and then I was feeling this lovely mood, and I just felt some attraction there, and then we spoke earlier, Dowji, my good brother, I'd reached out, and I'd spoken to Dowji, and I was saying I like this, and I just automatically wanted to take Harinam. I just wanted to take Harinam from Baba, and I did. And I remember the 3 days after, I felt this shift. There was this change. Felt this automatic peace was in me. Things had changed. Subtle things were changing, and so I watched more lectures, and slowly was falling more in love. Without realizing it at this time, I was just more happier. And then some devotee, as a devotee on the reading group, or sometimes come to the reading group, he had actually said, oh, Dibya, you still going to India? I want to go to India. And I was like, no, don't I? And I thought, oh, well, I'll get the visa. I'll just go up to Bristol, Cardiff, and get the visa. I hadn't got that committed in my heart at this point. And so I went up this one day to go and get my visa. And I went up across the waters to Wales and Cardiff, and gone into the office there, filled in the form to the best of my ability. And then I walked up, gave it to this lady, and she looked at it and she went, oh no, there's a mistake. I was like, oh, and the time was like 15 minutes to go, and it's closing. She went, no, it's going to be fine. She said, just change this, And I think I'd lent my computer to some other Indian who was trying to get their visa, and I'd given my phone to someone else, and somehow I was helping these other kind of devotees. And I'd gone on and I've got my form done and sent it via email to them, and then got to the desk and I was really, really happy and felt good. And then she looked, she's like, yes, 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 this is fine, this is fine. And then suddenly she went, oh, my. She went, I told you something wrong. That's wrong on your form. Now, for anyone normally going to get a visa, yes, it would be disappointing. I came out of there and I walked down a road and I just broke down into tears. And I didn't know why. This is not a usual occurrence. If I've got a visa, I've ever broke down and cried. And then suddenly it just come to me because I'd already kind of thought, I'm not going to see my Baba. And this big overwhelming feeling and realization of love come to me. And I messaged my Baba, oh no, I'm not going to be able to come. It's gone wrong. And I kind of just in this one day from just going to get a visa, I'd kind of committed to go. Suddenly realized I'd fallen in love with Baba. And then lucky enough, it all worked out. It's just me having a drama queen moment, you know. And a week later, I got the visa. I went out to India. And originally, I was just going to go out and, you know, just see a few places, pop in, see Baba, you know. And by the time the flight come and the day it come, I'd message Baba going, Baba, I want to be with you 24 hours a day. So this love just kept on building and building and building. I went to Agartala and I was still only at Harinam at this point and looked after so beautifully, got me a place to stay in. I'd get phone call, you know, am I okay? I've arrived everywhere. Invited up to the place that was Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami, Prabhupada Nitya Goswami, and Prabhupada Govinda Gopal Goswami, which is Nitya Goswami's son. They're all Goswamis. And I couldn't believe it that I've gone in and I'm with Prem Gopal, Nitya Gopal, Govinda Gopal, and I'm sitting on the floor and I'm getting like Maha, 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 Maha Prasad from 3 Goswamis. You know, being Christmas, the 3 wise men, you know, so I couldn't believe it. And then I realized at this point that I'd fallen in love. I couldn't imagine Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami out of my life. I had this thought. And I thought, that's marriage. And this is the best marriage ever. Diksha, he's never going to leave me. And that was it. And took Diksha.
There will be some people listening or watching that may not know who Prabhupada Prem Gopal Goswami is and how he fits into the Chaitanya family, the Gaudiya family. So can you tell us a bit about him and how he kind of links with the Chaitanya tree?
Yeah, well, from Nityananda, he's in the bloodline, the direct bloodline of Nityananda, and he's the 14th descendant in the Nityananda line, you know. So
yeah. So some viewers and listeners will remember we had Lalita on the show a couple of weeks ago. So Lalita is a disciple of Nitya Gopal Goswami, the brother of Prem Gopal Goswami. So these 2 wonderful brothers are not just spiritual descendants from Nityananda Prabhu, they're biological descendants as well. So they are, in that sense, related you know, biologically as well as spiritually to Nityananda Prabhu. And their father, who I have to confess his name escapes me, his father was in the 13th line of descent.
Prabhupada Gopal Goswami.
That's the one. And I had a fascinating, we spoke about this briefly before we started recording this, but I had a fascinating discussion with Lalita a couple of weeks ago. Something that I had never really thought of or considered was that so certainly in this Nityananda lineage, sannyas, like the way it is in the Sarasvat line, doesn't exist. There isn't sannyas in that way. And certainly there's a strong theological, philosophical view that actually sannyas is not good in Kali Yuga. Really, people shouldn't take sannyas in Kali Yuga because it's very difficult to follow, as we're seeing with other mats and sanghas right now. To live up to those goals or aspirations is almost impossible.
Even like monks in the Catholic, kind of thing, and the problems that have happened there. It's very difficult, and Mahaprabhu, forbidden it for this age.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's kind of useful to know in terms of how he fits in, where he fits in. One of the things that positively surprised me over the last 3 or 4 years of doing my own research is the Chaitanya family is quite big, or it's quite broad, and it's lots of branches. And for me, I had my whole train of thought, my whole thought process was turned upside down, because my spiritual or religious background in the Hare Krishna traditions is from ISKCON. So firstly, I remember starting my research for my book, and I thought, well, I'm going to I need to find a pinpoint. And I need to base all my research around that. And I thought, Prabhupada's going to be, as in A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he'll be my pinpoint. And then I realized after like 30 minutes, he can't be my pinpoint. I have to go back further. I actually started with Bhaktivedanta Saraswati Thakur, and most of my book is about the Saraswat line. There are mentions of mats in the Nityananda line too, but I think if I was to do a second edition, which some devotees are encouraging me to do, I'd have to go back even further and spend several years doing the research to try and fit everyone in positively. Yeah, and also a god brother of yours, Dalji, here in the UK. I had a very shaky WhatsApp call with him. Not that he's shaky, or hopefully I'm not shaky. The WhatsApp call was shaky about 2 years ago. I was prompted by someone to connect with him. He was in India at the time, in I think Vrindavan, and we were chatting about the Nityananda line. And in our conversation, he was using terms that I'd never really heard before. He was using terms like the traditional lines, or as Lalita explained a few weeks ago, the orthodox lines. And I was thinking, well, what, when I first heard it, when you hear something new, a new idea, firstly, your head challenges it. Well, I'm not sure what I think about that, or I'm not sure how I perceive that. And obviously, my background's in ISKCON, and I'm kind of seeing myself in this kind of Sarasvat line. So who are these others calling themselves the traditional line? And then you do your own research and your own reading, and your mind starts to open as to how these terms make sense. So tell us a bit about, I guess, Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami. He has a number of followers, does he? In terms of, and how many of them are kind of outside of India?
Yeah, well, there's, I think, up to 20K on his Facebook. A majority of that will be in India. So I've been so lucky to get the mercy to kind of, I think there's probably, Dowdy spends a lot of time in India. And then there's one other devotee, Govardhan, he's in the UK. There's only a few of us here in the UK. And there's some in Croatia, Serbia, he travels also to Austria, other places in Europe, so once a year. The Nitya Gopal, he'll go, or America, and he came to UK this year, which is lovely because he's my Shiksha guru. So I've kind of got double-barreled love hearts, kind of looking out for me.
I think it's great that they're brothers, actually, as well as spiritually, biologically as well. And that's like one big family. And I just love that. And, how you can all kind of connect with each other. I mean, I guess Lalita's like a spiritual cousin to you or something, or sister or something. I don't know.
Yeah, like Ma, we talk every day. And it was like the blessings come, as you know how it's, the mercy to get to serve a pure devotee, and it was, I was talking to Ma, and she mentioned that, Nitya Gopal's coming over, and, obviously my brother, Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami, it feels non-different to me. It's non-different. So I'm like, immediately like there, like the family member wants to be there. And I got to serve Nitya Gopal Goswami in the UK. And then say the other part of this is like, hopefully, with me and Lalita, we're both desiring that they both come over into the UK, both together, because when they're together, it's when I was in Agatala, it's so sweet. It is so beyond sweetness that you imagine like what brothers are like, you know. And this is a difference of mood, you know. They're like sitting on their bed together, cross-legged, chatting, laughing, you know, pushing each other's arm. And just this sweet mood of the Bengalis and, you know, in the family there, and, you know, they're like cousins and things. And you're just so welcomed and loved. And Prashad, you're okay. I'd take you back on the scooter back to your place. And, you know, beautiful, beautiful, sweet mood.
So certainly in kind of the Gaudiya Vaishnav tradition, your spiritual journey is taking you 20 years ago from ISKCON, initially starting in ISKCON, through experiences in the Naraya Maharaj Sangha, now to the Nityananda line, Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami. What is it particularly about Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami that you're attracted to, that you feel that strong connection with?
His big moonbeam smiles first, you know, he just transcends that out of his heart. And then there's another, it's just a scenario, this will give an example. So when I first turned up to meet Baba for the first time, I've come into the big kind of temple tent, and I've seen, and I saw Baba, and I'm like, obviously like, you know, there he is. And he's like, Dibya, you know, he called me over. So I've gone down to do my Dandavat pranams to his lotus feet. And as I've gone down, I've looked up and he's just up there going, it was kind of comical. And this is the sweetness. It just straight away was a hug. It was a hug and love. And then on a philosophical level is, you know, he's, you know, both Nitya Gopal and, you know, Prem Gopal, Govinda Gopal, or Madam Gopal, or the whole line, that they're already, from the moment they're a baby, being brought into this, their guru, you know, and he's deep. He comes from Tattva, he comes from all the Granthas and Bengali Granthas that haven't even been translated yet into English. So there's such a depth of knowledge, which when there's some confusions over some topics, it's very, very clearly explained, and where from, and the slokas, you know, just roll off and from book to book, and this is in this and this is in that book and this is where it says it here too, you know. It's just like, wow, okay, you know, it's very, very, very deep. I feel a lot of like it's all come from Shastra, you know. So it's amazing knowledge.
And you're obviously serving him. You're doing different things for him. Tell us a bit about some of the services you're doing for your Guru Maharaj. Particularly, I want to hear a bit about Radio Nitai, which I think is a project that you run, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. But the first thing, I'd go back on the word service as a thing, because for me, what happened is that I obviously fell in love with Baba so much. He just stole my heart. He's kept it for life now. And that's fulfilled the qualification for Diksha for me. But I came back from Radha Kund, and it was like, I think he swept out my heart from this material world. I'd lost quite a lot of attraction to anything else around me, and I was struggling about what to do and how can I be happy. And I thought, I love Baba, I love Baba. And it's like, my service is not service. It's like the debt of this love, like, you know, when you bring flowers in for a partner, you know, oh, I better serve my partner, bring her some flowers. It just comes from a spontaneous love. And then you know, come the reading groups first of all, and then Radio Nitai. And with Radio Nitai, we kind of like got bhajans and lectures, and it was a kind of, I was going the idea that so we can get association, you know, and connection. And Nitai is Nitai's universal radio. Nitai is not for one Sangha or another. Nitai is universal. There's not the Nitai family is a universal family. It's not just for the Nityananda line, you know. And this radio program is to help everybody, you know, to all come together. You know, like it's one project you're doing is because Nitai, we can't get nothing without Nitai. He's the storehouse of Prem. You know, if you don't go to Nitai, as a story, we can't remember the story, but someone went to Mahaprabhu and he said, have you seen my brother? And he got chastised, and he had to then cook prasadam for everyone because he committed offense by going to Mahaprabhu first. So have to go to Nitai, and Nitai is full of mercy, as you know, Jedi Madai. So, you know, they're not looking for offences. It's just this love again. So, yeah, this radio station is you know, got all sorts of different Maha mantras and, you know, different bhajans, kirtans. And I personally, every morning, put class on. One of Baba's class goes on, from which I download and then do different topics. So we had the Harinam from the heart of Haridas Thakur at the moment. There's Bhakti Fundamentals, which is another lovely, wonderful load of lectures. So if someone wanted to know, you know, getting up in the morning, washing, doing your tilak, you know, doing the deities, you know, your sadhya, your food, your prasadam, and all the things, the basics of Bhakti Fundamentals. So running these every day and sometimes in the evening. It's very nice.
So what I can do, I can put a link to Radio Nitai on this podcast promo, so people can listen to it directly. I have to admit, I'm in preparation for this podcast, I did tune in the other day, and I heard some lovely bhajans, which it was quite nice to have on in the background as I was getting on with stuff at home. So that was really good. I always feel really encouraged. It's always great to meet devotees, but I'm particularly encouraged to meet devotees who are doing their own kind of preaching projects and using their own kind of initiative to just preach and share Krishna consciousness. You know, because you've got another type of devotee who might be more like, I just need to wait for the authorities to give me permission to do something. You know, one of the, I mean, for example, this podcast I started 2 years ago as part of the bigger Hare Krishna project. We've had lots of guests, and most guests are willing to be guests. But every now and then you get someone who says, I need to get permission from my guru, or I don't feel qualified, or, you know, and yeah, it's just very encouraging to hear devotees running their own preaching projects. You know, I did some research on the Hare Krishna movement in the UK, which pretty much shows that the number of people in the UK chanting Hare Krishna, practicing Krishna consciousness, is around 0.002% of the population, which means there's a lot of work to be done in persuading those tough Brits to take up a life of bhakti. Westerners, British people are very reluctant to, not all of them, of course, but open their hearts and to surrender, to surrender to any spiritual tradition, actually, because that's part of kind of Bhakti Yoga, Krishna consciousness, surrendering. You know, I have to admit, I always don't feel like surrendering. I want to do my own thing in my own time and have my own plan. My plans never work, by the way. Yeah. It's only when I rely on the Lord and put trust in the Lord, Krishna, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that things finally start to kind of unravel. So that's really encouraging. And also Baba does Sunday morning Zoom classes as well, is it?
Yes, yeah. Every Sunday on a UK time, it's 11:30. We get in there for 11:15. We have a little bit, 10-15 minute kirtan. And Baba comes in the moment he's doing lecture for 1 hour on Ramananda Row. So, which is really nice. Which he did 73 lectures in lockdown, and now he's carrying on via this Zoom, which is lovely because now we get live darshan and, you know, can interact with Baba. And in the West here, not before, it was more of a case of you know have to go to India to see Baba and to be with Baba. And now it's every week, you know, we get to see Baba, and it's like going to church, you know, every Sunday. They go to the temple church.
It's really good, and I know other mats that have really kind of, they started Zoom during lockdown. I'd never heard of Zoom before March 2020, if I'm honest, and a lot of mats have started Zoom. They started Zoom classes during the pandemic, and they've carried them on. So the devotees from all over the world can connect with a particular guru or spiritual leader. So that's really encouraging. I'm kind of conscious we've been chatting for quite a while now. I'm happy to chat about anything else you want to chat about. Before we logged into this Zoom meeting where we're recording this today, I did comment how much I was encouraged by all the color around you, Dibya. I love the pink. I love the pink kind of kurta and kind of chadar there. Tell us a bit about, can we share a bit with the kind of viewers and listeners about the importance of color, or what colors are about? Because we had this conversation before we started broadcasting this, didn't we? because you look very pink and wonderful. Tell us a bit about that and color and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was this guy, and I'd wear white, and it's very pure, very nice, and it kind of I'd worn orange by mistake because I'm not supposed to. I was really told about that. But the thing is that I always understood that when I was at the manor, and this is God, and we're there to please Krishna. So when we cook, Radha Krishna, we're doing lovely plates and dishes like Radharani. She's always cooking a new dish. She's always ever changing, making it always ever fresh for Krishna. And so, for me, and is that color. Is every day I want to be fresh, and so if you see someone's got a new color on it, Radha and Krishna, like, oh, look, we're wearing today, look, that's nice, So, because I love my deities, and I want to try and dress well with them. And my Baba, when I took Diksha, I was like thinking, oh, what should I wear, for my Diksha? And so I'm thinking, oh, there's going to be some strict color because it's going to say white or orange for this. So then I kind of ring in an Indian shop, I kind of, oh, Baba, what do I wear for Diksha? Is there appropriate color? And he's like, any color. So this was wonderful. And then so, Baba, I've seen him wear some wonderful outfits that are just like a rainbow. So your colorful character, color of life, colors are here given to us by Radha Krishna, to use in their service, then I think most important in life is to bring smiles and peace and happiness to everybody with love.
Yeah, and I love that, because I think on a previous podcast recently, or sitting with a devotee recently, I was talking about this in terms of, why are there so many miserable devotees out there? We're practicing what we believe or what we think is the most sublime philosophy, the most wonderful philosophy of Krishna consciousness. We're following the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, of Srimad Bhagavatam, where we're being told and it's being revealed to us that we're actually not the body. This body isn't who we really are, and actually we're eternal spiritual beings. And why are we so miserable about that? We're never gonna die. I mean, exactly. I know life can be miserable day to day, but I know. Well, I try to distance myself from them, but I know so many miserable devotees.
Yeah.
And we should smile more and be happy.
Well, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada said, chant and be happy, not chant and be miserable. Huh?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I kind of love to hear you say that. We're obviously going to put some links and some contacts in this podcast promotion. But in terms of people, if you could just maybe say, in terms of if people wanted to connect with Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami, how can they do that? How can they find him? How does that work?
Yeah, well, it's possible with the links you put in. There'll be my number there, and also there's a number there. So if anyone's struggling with addiction problems and stuff, or I work inside like recovery programs and stuff, that connection to the Nitai radio. Also, then the link for Prabhupada Premgopal's Facebook. Also, there's a SoundCloud account, so you can actually listen to some of these lectures, and you can find his lectures are tracked in you, and you can kind of contact via myself or his Facebook. Probably maybe best come to me because I'm more accessible. I don't think he gets to get to his message with 20K's worth of followers. It's probably difficult, but then I can kind of we have like a WhatsApp group, WhatsApp Nitai family. It's just like our Sangha, we're together on there and can link up, and then the Zoom link, I can give the Zoom class link.
Please.
I'll give you
yeah. That'd be great. And can you just clarify, does Baba respond to his own messages on Facebook?
I'm uncertain what he does on his Facebook, but he's so accessible on WhatsApp. I could send a message, reply every day. If I stay alert for when I wait for when he appears online.
Because I have to say, I mean, some devotees know this, But what I mean, I took initiation from the guru I did in ISKCON because of a number of reasons, a number of things. But one of the main reasons that I did is because he responded to my email. Another sannyasi never responded to my email. And for me, that was just so important. Communication was so important.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a communicator. I work in communications.
Mm-hmm.
So I chose my guru in ISKCON based on one that responded to my email.
Yeah. Very important. Very communication is the biggest key to any relationship. We're in a relationship with the planet, with the air, with people, with animals, all living entities. And it's the same was same for me. I'd taken my Harry now before, and I knew I would have no access, and it didn't work for me that. And then I kind of then came to Baba, and you know, it's like it's so accessible and so personal, and I need that. I need that personal relationship. You know, I'm not. I'm not. I'm trying to be a devotee. You know, so I need a lot of help. You know, so
we all do. We all do.
yeah. You know, so it's very nice to have this little contact, and it's really funny. I think because remember one of the first not advertisement, but one of the things that kind of attracted me, and a funny line. It was like the Swami that uses WhatsApp. And now it's like that has a radio station. This is so fun.
So good. It's so good.
Yeah. It's cool because we move with the times, and Nitai's mercy is, you know, it's non-biased and it's everywhere. He's everything. He's the ornaments. He's the everything.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Well, on that note, Dibya, it's been great to have you on this week's edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast.
And you, so happy to be here with you.
It's been really good to have you on the show as guest number 47. Yeah, really appreciate it. It's good to catch up and see what you're doing. And you're as far as I'm aware, the first ever disciple of Prabhupada Premgopal Goswami to appear on the show. So you're kind of a record-breaking guest. Yeah, Jai Nitai, Hare Krishna. So I'll just say goodbye to everyone listening or watching at home, and then we can have a little bit of a catch-up after, a bit of a debrief, talk about the audience. No, I'm joking. Okay, so Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you for tuning into this week's edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. It's been fantastic to have Divya Prem on the show this week, talk about his background, a lot of the things he's been through. If you're watching this either on Facebook or YouTube, please do like it, love it, care for it, put a positive comment. We're not keen on negative comments. Please do put a positive comment and share the link with your friends and family. Until next week, thank you and Hare Krishna.
Jai Nitai.